time. I'm never sure without Russ.
I know,
I'm
it's
Randy. I'm
hard.
here with my buddy Danny.
What's up?
Today we are discussing an awesome topic. What's the topic today, Danny?
Mental health for developers, which is,
Ooh,
I think, a good one because I think, well, judging from, I don't know, our own experiences, everybody in the group community, I think this is like an issue that I think a lot of people deal with, just in general, right? People in general,
you
but
mean we're
also
not
especially,
robots? Beep beep boop bop beep boop bop
it'd be
10
easier.
11010. Yeah.
It would be a lot easier if we were sometimes, wouldn't it?
Hmm.
Ah, God. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, like, I think this is a good topic, I think, especially this time of year, because I think people also struggle a lot this time of year with, there's a lot going on with the holidays, there's the stresses. I always think, too, like, the new year coming up is always adds a level of anxiety and stress because it's like you feel like you have to, like, finish something and then you have to, like,
Hmm.
start something. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's
But
weird,
isn't
but
it the most wonderful time of the year? That's what the song says.
is it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Christmas or whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah.
No, this is stress. I mean, it's a stressful time, and then after it is just like it's like what Marcus Aurelius says, after fame comes oblivion. Like fame is like Christmas and New Year's, and then after that is just oblivion. It's like months of just nothing. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's hard because
Mhm.
you feel this like pressure to run around everywhere, do all this stuff, but you're still trying to learn and like you still want to progress. And I think, and then in general, like coding's not easy, especially when you're learning. And even after you've been doing it for a while, it's still not that easy. And you're still gonna have bad days. So it's like I think it's a
Mhm.
good yeah, a
Yeah,
good
so
one.
mental health is a very appropriate topic for developers. And it's true because we're not robots as much as we might think. So I think a lot of people get
Much of
into
you might wanna
development.
be.
Yeah, we might want to be. We get into development because generally we don't relate too well with humans. And so we're like, well, if I'm not relating with humans, I must be more robot than human. So, but what are these emotion things coming up? I can't deal with them, need to repress them and all types of stuff. And it causes a lot of issues with people.
It does, yeah. Charles liked your Marcus Aurelius quote.
Ah,
Always
sweet.
good. Yeah, he's great.
Thanks.
Marcus Aurelius is awesome.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite quotes because it seems, I mean, it's what people forget about fame. Everybody wants to be rich and famous, but they forget that, once you're rich, then you worry about losing the money, and once you're famous, then comes oblivion. So,
And you have
yeah,
also
take it
no free
take it
time.
from Marcus. He
Yeah,
knew what he was talking about.
he did know what he was talking about. What's up, Chris?
Yeah.
Good morning, everybody.
Good
Yeah,
morning, Eric. Morning, Chris. Morning, Charles.
so
All
just
right.
I know we know like enough and everybody we have to deal with enough mental health stuff that we know the issues, but it was interesting because just out of curiosity, I went on ChatGPT. I wanted to see what it thought was like the top five for developers, and it said, and I thought these were pretty good: burnout, imposter syndrome, social isolation, anxiety, and perfectionism.
Well, let's talk about them each one at a time. And before we do that, you guys should know if you are watching on Facebook, we do also have a YouTube channel. Lots of stuff available on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, turns out we also have a Facebook group where you can connect with like-minded developers. And if you do come join us on Facebook, and for all the people watching right now live on Facebook, you can post down in the comments. And any questions you have
Yeah.
there, we will answer for you guys live, which is one of the benefits of coming to join us bright and early on Saturday mornings. I mean, what better? So let's go through those one at a time. Let's talk about them, Danny.
Yeah, I liked it. I thought it was a pretty good list because it's funny. I was actually dealing with burnout is a tough one. I think this is one I was actually dealing with recently because like you know you want to like advance quick. I don't know. In my head, I see like where I want to go.
That's only you. That's only you.
No,
Yeah.
but like I know, right? We all want to get to the goal as fast as possible. So I think we push ourselves, but then it's so easy too to just like not take breaks, to not give yourself time. And then like you find yourself staring at problems and your brain feels like mush. And that's how I always think of burnout. Like you just can't process any more information.
Mhm.
And I was feeling this recently. There he is. I was feeling this recently because I just finished a decent sized project and I was like trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. And it's like I could tell I needed a break, but I wanted to keep going. And I think that's where you get that like burnout feeling, right? Where you just like can't do any more almost.
Yeah, definitely. I
Good
I
morning,
agree with you.
gentlemen.
Hey,
What's
welcome.
up? You made it.
Yeah,
Good
it's 9:04.
morning, everybody.
I thought it
I
was the
was,
puppy causing problems.
I mean, it is,
Yeah,
but
not sleeping and stuff.
yeah,
Uh,
Dude, they're like having a little kid there. They're tough when you first get them.
yes, they are, but they are
mhm.
so much fun. Good
Well,
morning,
welcome.
everybody. Sorry for being a little late this morning. I
Oh,
actually did
late.
wake up like twice, and then I was like, I got time, and then it
That's
was like,
dangerous, isn't it?
And then you did.
and then I was
Yeah.
like, oh, I don't have time. There's none left.
Time is time is in the negative. Yeah, we
Yeah.
were just talking about a few different things for mental health. First one was burnout that we were talking about. And so
Mm.
this is one. So it's like, Danny and I always joke about being a dark, cold night on the side of Everest. Like
Yeah.
when you're learning and when you're especially in development, because there's an unlimited amount of stuff to learn that is increasing probably at a faster pace than anyone could possibly ever learn it. And
Yeah.
so you feel like you just have this tsunami of information. And I always say, given a long enough time frame, you can learn anything. But we get into trouble, and especially with burning out, when we want to get something done in a shorter time frame than it actually takes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a
Eh,
good way to look at it too, like that the amount of time it should like actually does take versus like what you're trying to push yourself to accomplish faster when you can't really do things faster than they are. It's funny
Yeah.
too that you mentioned like all the new tools and stuff. Like I was subscribed to a couple of like newsletters that give you like insight and like new stuff coming out in tech, and it's like it is so overwhelming sometimes when you look
Oh
at
my
like
God.
all
Yeah.
the crap coming out, and it's like, and each thing is just
Well,
like a whole new thing to learn, a whole nother set of freaking, you know, documentation that's
I
like
think,
1,000-page book. It's like, it's nuts.
yeah, I think it's like especially hard for new developers because you don't have a full understanding of like everything that is out there and what it all means. So you see people who are learning like these new random libraries or things like that, or like these things that come out, and it's like you're never ever going to use that in your entire career as a developer, but you feel like you're getting imposter syndrome because you're like, I should know all this, I should be able to do this. And I think that's sort of the industry's fault too, and like
Yeah.
giving people this idea of you need to somehow know all of this stuff in, I don't know, 6 months when other people have taken 20 years to do that,
Well,
like
that
senior
was the worst
developers
thing.
are 20 years in.
That was the worst thing about the boot camp too, which I knew like going into the boot camp by its very definition, right, is moves fast and you have
Right.
to do stuff. But still, that aside, like the throwing all the technologies at you too, it's like it's so overwhelming for people because it's like, well, if you don't know which direction you want to go in to begin with, it's like, well, what, do I just do all of this? Because this is like
Right.
insane. It would take you forever to literally learn all the tools they were trying to introduce us to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point with like learning all these extraneous technologies because it is very nice to follow the shiny object syndrome. But
Mhm.
if you can focus more on the fundamentals, like the things that'll be around, because it's going to take you 5 years to really become competent at whatever you're going to do. And who knows what shiny new thing is going to be around in 5 years. But there's a good chance
Yeah.
that HTML, CSS, JavaScript will still be around in 5 years because they've been around for 20 already. And so sticking with the fundamentals and learning that in depth and then kind of applying that to new things. It's like this John Wooden, the basketball coach, he was quite prolific and he would spend, I think, the whole first practice
Hmm.
teaching guys how to put on their socks properly so they wouldn't get blisters. But it's like if you
Yeah.
focus on the fundamentals, then you can build on top of that and you don't have to worry about a weak base.
No, and that's a good
Yeah.
point too, because I think if you learn a coding language, if you learn how to do things correctly, that information never goes away either. And it applies to other stuff that you're going to learn later too. I think that's the other thing I noticed a lot, and I've been noticing it more and more recently, is the more you start to understand like the larger picture too, and you do know a language like solidly, it's easier to learn other stuff too. It comes easier over time. I think we put too much pressure on ourselves early on to try and like digest all this stuff that really it's just too much right away.
Yeah.
Good
I was
morning,
gonna say
David. Good
something.
morning, Eddie. Good morning, Chris. If you guys have
Yeah, good morning,
questions
everybody.
related to mental health in coding, feel
Yeah.
free to drop them in the comments. We will answer your questions
Yeah.
live.
Or any recommendations that you have for other people. Um,
True.
I I have one that's you know, now I lost it.
I think the answer was getting another dog. That's usually the answer,
Yeah,
right?
that
Yes,
helps. That always
yes.
helps. Yeah.
Getting another puppy makes your mental health go up.
Well, I think with
Oh,
burnout,
I
like,
remembered it.
oh,
I
go ahead.
remembered it. I remembered it. Was limiting complexity, because I think one of the things that we try to do when we're like beginners is we try to like try new things and put together like technologies and things like that. And I've seen a lot of our students and other developers do this where they're trying to build a project, but they're trying to build it in the most complex way possible, which sounds great because you're like, oh,
But it
you're
needs to be
using,
perfect the first time.
yeah, well, but it's more of like they're trying to, make it like use all these different technologies or, uh, just like
Mm.
adding complexity so they can learn more things or use things they've learned. But I think what's really important when you're starting out is to limit complexity as much as possible because you need to understand what's actually going on, right? I think there's so much more at understanding why these things are happening in the way they are versus just like go along with it. Like,
That's a
that
good point
happens a
though, right?
lot.
Because you can use packages, there's tons of stuff that you can
Yeah.
rely on to do the work for you, but you won't develop a good understanding of how those things work if you're just using other people's code for everything, basically, too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And like I see that a lot with like React, right? When you first start learning React, you have to just kind of make these assumptions and go with them, which it brings up like a lot of resistance. Like people are like, well, why am I doing this? And why am I doing that? And it's because we try to add complexity that we just have to like skip over the explanation of those things. So I think if you stick with simplicity in the beginning till you have a full understanding, then you can add layers of complexity as you go.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
David Campbell said, I think that's been me a few times, try to make it too complex from the start. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
we've seen it a lot. I mean, I try to do this too, is we talk about this a lot in our incubator program is like build an MVP first, right? Like a minimum viable product, something that just does one simple thing and then add complexity layers after that. Uh, you guys want me to read that?
I
Eddie.
was just
So,
looking
so
at
Eddie
it.
asked a question, the shrinking box syndrome. I sometimes feel that because of my age and the rapid evolution of technology and languages, that I'm in a box that seems to be getting smaller and smaller every
Yeah.
day. When I first started trying to learn Python and HTML and whatnot, Python was at version 2.93. Now they're up to 3.13. I feel like the dinosaur stuck in a bog.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
the cool thing is if you're a dinosaur stuck in a bog, one day you're going to turn into gas. So,
Yeah.
and then power a whole bunch of cars and different stuff.
At least you'll be
Hopefully it'll
useful
be a
then,
cool
right?
car. Yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah. I
So
get that though. That's hard. That's a tough one too, because it is, there's so much stuff just keeps coming out. And we mentioned that before, but like tech moves so quickly. And I think that is a big sort of block for a lot of people that are starting out is like you feel like you need to keep up, but at the same time, you just need to learn it as well. Because I think like,
I heard,
yeah,
like take Python or something, right? Yes, they're on like 3.13 now or whatever, but if you learned 3.7, there's not going to be that much difference. There's going to be some new
Mhm.
things introduced, maybe some changes, but you can figure it out pretty quickly if you already know it. And I think
I
that's,
heard,
you
oh,
know, you go ahead.
I heard a really good analogy in terms of that stuff because we're in an age of information overload. Like you can just be filled up with information. And it used to be like not too long ago, probably 10, 20 years ago, where you could bookmark stuff and get back to it. And you could like eventually get to a point where you could kind of clear out your bookmarks. But now we're at that spot where there's just way too much information. And so instead of thinking about bookmarking stuff and getting back to it, it's more of looking at it
mm,
as like a waterfall or a stream or some type of like nonstop conveyor belt buffet type of thing where you can just take a look saying where I'm at right now, what is most useful to me, and you can pick that out of the stream now and just recognize that there's going to be more coming in the future. So that way you don't have to worry so much about the things that pass you by because if you try and hold on to all this stuff, you're just going to get way overwhelmed, and that's going to probably cause a lot more burnout and overwhelm.
yeah. I like that analogy. I like to think of the like sushi boat thing with like the little river where you get to pick your
Yeah.
plate out.
I know, right?
Um,
Yeah. So what were some other topics, Danny?
Oh, so burnout, we had the next one was imposter syndrome, which we know obviously everybody's phase dealt with. And I
Hmm.
think it's something that doesn't necessarily go away either. That feeling like, that you just don't belong or you're gonna fail or like you're not good enough for what you're doing.
I
Well,
wanted to touch
Scott.
upon something really quick. Sorry, before that, the
Mhm.
shrinking box syndrome, because it made me think of like how I felt when I first started, which was um like when I first started, I was learning React, right? And then I got somewhat proficient in React, and then Next.js blew up and became this big thing. And I felt the same way where I was like, I just learned React. Now there's like this whole nother way of looking at it. Then I started learning Next.js, and then every like 6 months, Next.js releases
Completely
some
changed.
giant thing. Yeah, and it completely changes, right? So that shrinking box syndrome, it never really goes away. The best recommendation that I have is to start thinking about the way that you learn things in a systematic way, right? So like every time that you want to take on some new language, go into something like ChatGPT and ask it for what are the main topics related to React, for example, that I need to understand in order to become proficient, right? And then it's going to list a bunch of stuff like understanding what JSX is and I don't know what hooks are and things like that, right? Then you take that information, like you could do this for a coding language like HTML, right? It's like, okay, what do I need to learn in order to master HTML? Well, it's going to be like elements, tags, attributes, like semantic tags. That's pretty much it, right? So you take those things and you just master that. Don't worry about all the new stuff. And then as it comes, you slowly integrate that in. Like Next.js just released something new, and I've probably used 3 of their new 20 features,
Yeah.
right? But that's just part of it. It's like you don't always need to use everything that's coming out
Well,
all the
that's the other
time.
thing too, is a lot of it's not going to apply to your projects too. Or a lot of like the new
Right.
features sometimes are very targeted to a specific audience. Like, like a lot of their new features are performance and optimization stuff that's really for like large enterprise level stuff that they're trying to help, right, make it more efficient and faster.
Yeah.
And you're not going to necessarily need that all the time. So it might not even come into play. And the other thing too is I
Yeah.
think that we forget a lot, like when we're learning, and I did this to myself so many times, like you want to rush, you want to get there, but also remember too that as time progresses, if you just keep at it, it will get easier and easier also because you're
Yeah.
going to get better. You're going to understand things more. And these obstacles, they get like I don't know, the bar to overcome them gets lower as you get more
Yeah.
skilled and stuff with time. And I think, but we all want to be experts immediately, and that just isn't reality, right?
Yeah.
Much as we want it.
Mhm.
Totally.
Mhm.
So
Scott, and about
go ahead.
imposter syndrome. So Scott Adams, the guy who did the Dilbert comic,
Mhm.
he wrote a couple books, and in one of the books, he was talking about changing your mindsets. And so, one thing that he had in there was that I'm an imposter, you're an imposter, everybody's an imposter, because everybody does encounter imposter syndrome. Maybe not in the same area that you're doing it, but it's somewhere in their life.
Oh
Everybody
yeah.
feels that.
Yeah.
And also kind of noticing the cognitive distortions in that. So like if you're feeling like an imposter, that's emotional reasoning. So you emotionally feel like you're an imposter, you're a fraud, and so you think that must be true. It doesn't mean it's
Mhm.
true. It's just your emotions
Mm.
are misleading you.
You know what's funny about it too? A lot
Interesting.
of imposter syndrome has to do with our, natural like social ability. Like we want to be social, we want to be part of the group. But imposter syndrome is funny too because a lot of times it also comes from that place of like you want to be the best in the room. And it's
Mm.
like kind of funny because it's like, when is that ever the case? Like, that somebody's gonna be the best every time they walk in the room and stuff. So I think like, yeah, I mean, you get better understanding as you go with time and things get easier and we're all going to feel like imposters at the time though. There's nothing you can do about that. I think like
Mhm.
mental
Yeah.
framing and stuff is good though.
Yeah, what's the
Yeah.
next one, Danny?
Oh, next one, sorry. Oh, this is a good one too, is social isolation. And I
Mm.
think this one's actually a pretty good one too, because you get caught up in doing this stuff and it can feel like you just sit in front of your computer by yourself.
That's the reason I became a
I
developer,
know,
so I didn't
right?
have to
Yeah.
do. No.
I have two thoughts. One, I want to go back to imposter syndrome real quick, just because
Mhm.
I thought of something that has
It's a
helped
big
me
one.
in the past. Yeah. And I think this is something that a lot of junior developers struggle with is imposter syndrome. One of the reasons that I think I struggled with this for a long time is because I never actually took on the identity of a developer. Like I always
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
when I started learning, like going to the boot camp, and people would ask me like what I do, I'd give them some like weird, complicated answer where I'd be like, well, I do sales, but then on the side, sometimes I make websites and
Occasionally I
I
do
do a
this
lot of tech
also.
stuff and like yeah, and people were like, what the hell does that even mean? And I'm like,
I
okay.
collect dogs.
Yeah, yeah, I collect chihuahuas and
I put them in teacups.
I live by a lake. Um Yeah, so they would get some weird answer, and that I think is partly fuels that imposter syndrome because it's really hard to get to the point where you want to just identify as a developer, right? Like just yes, yes, Randall, I said it. Identify as a developer. So
No, I was just thinking about chihuahuas and teacups, actually.
oh
Wouldn't that be cute
okay.
though?
I have a picture I'll send you. Don't worry.
Nice.
Got you, bro. Um but yeah, so like as soon as, and we say this in the group too, right? Which is like, as when you're ready to commit to this idea of like the rest of your life is going to be you're a developer, like that's what I mean, that's the idea here, right? If you're just like playing around with this, I don't know why you're in this group, because the idea here is you're
Yeah.
switching jobs to become a software developer. That is your life goal now. And so why not identify with that? Why not say, yeah, that's who I am. That's what I'm doing. So as soon as I made that shift, all of a sudden I had so much more confidence in what I was doing because I was like, yeah, like, outside people, I think we forget too that like outsiders, like non-developers, have no freaking clue what it even means to be a software developer. They think what we do
No.
is just magic. So when you say that to somebody, they're like, "Oh, that's awesome." You just stare at weird computer code all day. Like,
Yeah, they're not going to ask you to solve FizzBuzz. They're
yeah,
not going to
like
be like, "Oh, you're a
exactly.
developer? Solve
Oh,
FizzBuzz on this
solve this.
whiteboard."
I have a problem
Draw
for
for
you.
loop. Draw for loop. Do
I
it
don't
now.
believe you.
They're
Yeah.
gonna test you. The I like that. Sorry, I just
Chris
wanted to
is,
read Bryce's
I'm a
comment because
lake man. I want to read Chris's comment. I'm a lake man.
he is a
Thank you.
leg man. Yeah, no, I think that's important though. How we identify ourselves is crucial with respect to imposter syndrome. I think that's a really good one. And I like too that Bryce made a point there. He said, I just want to be able to code without the use of ChatGPT. And I think that's kind of, it's funny, but I think that's also kind of looking at it a little wrong. Because I think these days you're going to be using it.
Yeah,
Everyone uses it, I
there's
think,
a
to help.
pretty
But
simple solution for that too, Bryce. You just block that website. Just
yeah,
block
maybe you have
ChatGPT
to.
and you're good.
Yeah.
Uh,
This was on the whiteboard.
Yeah. Yeah,
uh,
Randall Lapointe says he doesn't really identify himself as an
No.
educator anymore. It's weird, and it's because it's a mental shift. It is very weird, but as soon as you do that, you just take on the idea of coding in a different way. You're not like, "Oh, this is a hobby." You're like, "This is what I'm doing with my life now."
Well,
You
that's it,
know?
right? Like I think back to like even like, when I first started teaching, I remember feeling like an imposter when I first went to classes and stuff, because we all feel that way at any new job or any new career, right?
Yeah.
And I think back to that a lot because that gives me insight into how I feel now, right? Where it's like it's going to get better. And I think
Hmm.
you're right. The identification is like crucial. I think the other thing I always remind myself too is like everybody's anybody who's a developer now, they were in this place before of learning, of
Yes.
not knowing. And so there's no reason for me to feel bad about it when I'm in this place now, but I'll eventually be out of this place if I just stick with it, right? If it's something I'm gonna
Yeah.
commit to, you'll get out of that area eventually, and then you'll be the senior person, right? You'll be the one that knows everything or whatever.
Yeah.
mhm.
I think if you truly love coding too, if this is like a passion of yours and you're not just doing it for money, the longer you stay in just this realm of development, the more you realize these things too, right? Is
Yeah.
like the more you're just going to realize, like, I really love doing this and I don't need somebody to tell me that I'm good enough to be a developer and I don't need to feel imposter syndrome because you're just doing what you love and you continue, down this path of learning because that's the
Also,
other thing is like you're just always going to learn stuff. Like
I was gonna say
it's,
there's also a ton of developers out there that aren't that good and that don't continuously learn,
yeah,
and you will blow by them
yeah,
at some point. So there's
in
plenty of
no
people out
time.
there.
Yeah.
It's like any other thing, you know?
Well, it's like one of those careers. I mean, you can, for the most part, a lot of careers you can learn basically up to a certain level and never really have to learn more. Like you can, of course, always learn more in any career, but for most careers, you can get up to like a proficiency level where like you're like, okay, I'm
Yeah.
great at what I do. Like I'm great at changing tires. Cool. I'll go work at like Jiffy Lube. And like you can do that your whole life, right? And nobody's ever going to be like, did you read the new tire manual? Did you hear about the new tires that came out, right? But in software development, you have to constantly do that. So the faster that you sort of just adopt that mentality of I'm just going to continue learning forever now about technology, and if you enjoy that, you're going to have a lot of success in this field.
I think that's the crucial thing. Like if you enjoy it too, is also important, right? That
Yeah.
you should enjoy it because it is something you're gonna have to continuously learn. It's not something where you can just
Yeah, otherwise
stop,
it
you know?
just turns into a job again, like
Yeah.
everything else.
Before we run out of time today, let's
Mm,
talk about some suggestions for mental health in coding, in development, maybe even personal
mm,
practices that we have that help with mental health.
That's
okay.
a good
Because
idea.
I think that would be helpful to cover that for everyone out there. So
I
I'll go
have one. You
first.
go first. Okay.
Okay.
I didn't
This
know
is
what you were
some,
doing. We didn't know what was going
yeah,
on.
this is something that Danny and I had talked about for a long time. But at the end of the day, reflecting on your day and just writing down some small delights. So a few
Mm,
things that you can be grateful for that happened. And this is an interesting one because when you start doing it, you're like, nothing, nothing happened.
It was
It was
horrible.
terrible. It was horrible. How could it? And so you're just like, okay, well, lunch wasn't terrible. I had pizza. I like pizza. Okay, cool. That was good. And then after you do it for a few days, you try and aim for like 3 to 5 things, something like that. And then after a few days, it gets easier and easier, and you're able to kind of savor those moments a second time. Like not only did you enjoy them when they were happening, but then before you're going to sleep, you're thinking about these things again, and it's like, oh yeah, that was cool. My day was good. And then you're going to sleep in a good mindset, and you kind of carry that with you until the morning.
It really does, dude. That was like that's one of the fastest ways to like increase your positivity in general and your outlook. It's crazy how well it works. And it really takes like try it for like 2 weeks if you're gonna try it every day. And it can be things like, my coffee was really good this morning. The sun was nice when I walked, it doesn't have to be anything crazy, but you'd be surprised how much you start to realize like just how many things are delightful, you know?
yeah.
It's
Hey,
a good
David
one.
Campbell, we're grateful for you being in this group as well, man.
Absolutely.
And everybody else who's
Absolutely.
here. We're really grateful that you guys come and show up every week.
I think I
Um,
mentioned this one before, but I'm gonna say it again because I think it's good for especially like burnout and stuff, which is scheduling time to do things that are not coding, like
yes.
your hobbies, spending time with loved ones, but making it a part of your day, like a scheduled part of your day, so that it's not something that comes out of the blue. It's not you don't feel like you have to, because like sometimes like when stuff comes up like that, it can feel like you still want to learn and whatever. Schedule it in your day, have that part so that you can just go do it. It helps a lot.
Yeah.
Oh,
Randall
Lapointe's
Lapointe
been looking to,
mentioned
yeah.
something. Yeah, he's been reading a book, but he mentioned something that I was going to say too, which is just go out in nature, right? Like
Yeah. Oh
make
God,
sure
yeah.
that you get some time around like trees and plants and animals and like real earth, not technology that's
Dude,
man-made.
I take a well, it helped with getting the dog, but I usually go on 2 walks a day, and that's like one of the best things. Is just getting outside for a little while. It's so helpful.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter the
And
weather either, just getting out
Randall
there.
Lapointe will also agree with me on this one is getting as many puppies as you possibly can.
That all at once.
The more dogs equals more happiness. I have another thing too. So there's been a whole bunch of books that I've read this year that have been kind of like revolutionary in terms of like thinking and stuff like that. And for anybody who does suffer from anxiety or depression, there is an author. His name is David Burns, and this is his most recent book, Feeling Great. But it's like an absolutely incredible book for learning to change your thoughts to change the way that you feel. And this is
Mm,
just something that I think it's one of those things that so interestingly enough, his older book called Feeling Good, they actually did studies of just people reading that book versus people who were actually taking antidepressives. And people just reading that book had better results, meaning they were less depressed at the end of 2 months than people who are actually on antidepressant
that's
medication.
crazy.
So, like, it's crazy how much changing your thoughts can change the way you feel. And so, you can read Feeling Good, but that one's from published like 30 years ago. Feeling Great just came out a couple years ago, and it's like all the most modern stuff, but it's something I've read over and over again because the wisdom that comes out of that book for how to handle your thoughts and how those impact how you feel is just out of this world.
No, yeah, you
Yeah.
mentioned that book a lot too, and I know, and he has some really good ideas in there. I think that's a good one for people. I also wanted to answer Charles, he's asked if we meditated and if it had any good benefits. I think I really like it. It helps a lot. The only thing I will say about it is don't expect benefits from it immediately. It takes time. Like it's something that you have to dedicate literally time to as well to get start seeing the positive benefits from it as well. I think you see the benefits kind of right away, but it can be frustrating as hell too at the beginning. So just know that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially if you're outcome oriented, because the only
Yeah.
way that so you can't meditate wrong, but the only way to achieve inner peace is to not have that as a goal, really.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of like a catch-22. So if you plan on meditating, there's a whole bunch of stuff for learning it, but it's not meditation in the short term is not going to make you more relaxed.
For Chris, it
In the
does. For
long
him, it
term, it
just turns
will.
into thinking.
Yeah. That's well,
Um,
that's meditation.
Yeah, that's all
I
it
have
Meditation
a
is.
is
few
thinking, and then
suggestions.
it's like meta thinking. It's
Yeah.
recognizing that you're actually thinking.
And not holding on to those thoughts. Let them go.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I have some other suggestions. One of them related to this meditation thing. If you want something that is I've struggled a lot myself with meditation. I get bored, my mind races. I can't focus on meditation. But one of the things that I have done that I have had a lot of success with in the short term is Kundalini yoga, which is sort of like meditation, sort of like yoga. It's like sort of a mix between them. And there's my girlfriend does it, and she follows this guy Jai Dev, who's like really good. I'll drop a link below, and you guys can check it out if you want to. It's more of like an exercise than a meditation, but it's really both, and it may seem like completely weird, batshit crazy stuff to some people, and that's fine. But it's really powerful, and you can get a lot out of doing like one session.
I also I
And
just wanted to okay, sorry, I just wanted
yeah.
to mention I threw in the comments too. There's this book, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. It's like really
Mhm.
short, really good overview of like more about like the theory behind meditation too, and like what you're doing and stuff that can be very helpful if you're starting out with meditation. It's very accessible too. Really good book.
Yeah, here's a link to that Kundalini yoga instructor, but
Hmm.
um, definitely worth checking out. The other thing I was going to say that I find to have a lot of success for me um, is exercise,
Oh
right? I
yeah.
think
Hmm.
one of the main things that a lot of people miss, especially software developers, is we sit in front of a screen all day and we give up on exercise, right? And that's how people get really unhealthy, and they don't have longevity in this career path because they're so focused on coding that they forget they have a body as well. And I think it's really important. Now, I can't tell you what is going to be the perfect exercise for you because I think everybody is very different. But finding something that you actually enjoy is important, whether that's walking, running, kickboxing, lifting weights, whatever it is. You need to find something that you can do at least like 3 times a week uh to get your body moving and like actually move your body, not like, hey, I just like stepped outside to get the mail.
No,
And
that's
I
a
would
good
go
point though.
so far
Doing
as
things you like, oh, sorry, I was gonna say, because like I love hiking and stuff too, and it's great exercise, and it's
Yeah.
good because it's like something fun that I enjoy. I don't feel like I'm just, standing there on a, stationary bike or something, just pedaling nowhere. I hate that
Yeah.
stuff. So yeah, I agree. I think that's a
Yeah, and
really good
each
point.
person's different. Like I could do
Yeah.
that. I like row. I have a rower and I do that and I'll sit there for an hour and row, and that's fine with me. But some people like need to be out in nature, and that's totally fine. Whatever it is, but you got to be like moving your body.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say,
I w
Randall?
I would go so far as to say is if you're looking for something between meditation and exercise, go do exercise first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because one of the problems, so there's this guy Osho, he talks about this all the time, how Westerners have a problem where we're in such like a frantic way of life that we
Hmm.
can't sit still.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so he has an active meditation, but generally if you exercise, it'll get all of that frantic energy out of you, and then you'll be able to sit still. So if you're looking for something to do and you're not exercising, exercise first. And then if you're looking for something after that, go for the meditation. But most
Yeah.
likely what you need is the exercise, and it's going to help you sleep, it's going to help you get
Yeah.
rid of stress, it's going to help you feel better. Like there's so many
Anxiety,
benefits
it
to
does
exercise. If
everything.
they could,
Yeah.
yeah, if they could make it into a pill, like every pharmaceutical company would want to do what exercise does. But it's just
Right.
something that the other thing that I would say with exercise is go very, very, very easy on yourself at the beginning. Like
Yes.
do something so easy that it's almost laughable how easy it is. Like
Yeah.
you're not going to want to go run an hour every day. Go run once around the block or something like that. Do that
Yeah.
every day. Or maybe just put on your running shoes and step outside every day. Like something that's so the bar is so low that it's laughable. that you can actually get out there and do it every day.
Why do you not want to do something that's intense?
Because there's some, I mean,
This
just
is
look at
why
what happens.
everybody stops their New Year's
New Year's
resolutions.
resolutions.
Yeah,
Yeah, everybody
it's too
burns out
hard.
of it. So if you go really hard, it seems cool, but it's not sustainable. But if you
Yeah,
go really easy, it seems laughable, but it's sustainable. And what you
yeah,
really want is to change your way of life. So do something that's sustainable over the long term, over the long term. You can always do more, but if you try very hard in the beginning, guaranteed you're going to burn out and finish in a few days, maybe a week.
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
No, that's a good one. I think also too, just remember that we're whole people. We're not just one thing. And one thing doesn't define us. I think that's the like most important thing is it's so easy to get hyper focused on like success as determined solely by like what we produce or something like that and forget that you have a whole life. And you wanted to change careers for a reason. So keep that in mind and try and stay positive too on the trajectory that you chose for yourself.
Yeah. I
Mhm.
have at least one other thing I can share. I think what's really important is having emotionally meaningful goals and future pacing for those, right? So we talked about this a little bit a few minutes ago, but if your idea of why you're in software development is just to make a lot of money, you're probably not in the right field because you can make a lot of money in pretty much anything you want to do nowadays, right? Like literally. Um, and I think a lot of people miss how difficult it actually is to become a skilled software developer, and it takes a lot of commitment. So if you have an emotionally, vested goal of yours, whether that's like taking care of my family or buying my mom a house or whatever it is, like, right, something that's like meaningful for you. It could just be like, I just want to be able to show off to people that I can accomplish a goal, right, that I put my mind to. Whatever it is, you need some sort of goal, and then you need to future pace too. Like, and we do this inside the web dev incubator is we quarterly plan, right? So that you know like where you're going. Because one of the hardest things when you're a junior developer is like there's just so much out there. There's so much information. There's so many different options you can take that you just end up bouncing around to like whatever seems interesting that day, and you really get nowhere, right? You just stuck in this like sort of orbiting pattern around the idea of becoming a software developer. So what you really want to do is find a path that gets you to where you want to be. So let's say your path is I want to land a job working at Google. Cool. Now go look at listings from Google, look at what they're looking for in an employee, and then build a path with all those things on it. So if it's like learn JavaScript, learn React, learn Next, whatever it is, right? You're going to build your path to learn those things to get to your goal. I think it's really important because if you're not doing that, you're just sort of floating around here and like hanging out, you
Yeah.
know?
I mean, that's a great point. So figuring out what you're doing in the future and having emotionally impactful goals. I thought with the emotions you were going to say emotionally worthwhile relationships because
Yeah.
That's
Danny mentioned one
two.
of those
Yeah.
things was like feeling isolation. And
Yeah.
I also think I was having a discussion with a friend not too recently about relationships. And at least from what I've heard, you don't need to have too many. If
No.
you have a few good
Yeah.
relationships, and particularly if you can work on having a good relationship with yourself. So, treat like Danny and I joke about this all the time, how we always talk to ourselves a lot worse than we talk to anybody else,
Oh God,
especially a
yeah,
friend.
right.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, learning to recognize that and talk to yourself in a better way, but then just have a few close relationships or work on building them because they don't have, for some people, they can happen automatically, but generally it's not something that happened automatically. Like for me and Danny, it took meeting up regularly, and now all three of us meet up regularly. And guess what? Now we have a group where we meet regularly every Saturday
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we meet with a whole bunch of other coders, and if that's something you're interested in, it's called Web Dev Incubator, and we could share more information about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's a really difficult thing for men, like specifically for men these days. I think women are a lot more skilled at like building communities and things like that, but it's tough for men, especially if you're a software developer and you're in isolation. So that is part of why we built this community and why we built the web dev incubator, so that you have a support system of other men who are, and women, actually there are women inside the group too, but other software developers who are going through the same struggles that you're going through, who are experiencing the same imposter syndrome, who are struggling with their own mental health. And we get to share those things every week. And I know for me, that's super meaningful. I know that like everybody in the group really values and cherishes Saturdays because it's time when we get to share, like, what did we do this week? And it keeps us accountable, right? So if we didn't do a lot, we're like, now I have to go share that I didn't do shit this week, right? Or like, hey, I struggled with this week because I had a new puppy and I couldn't just like wake up at any hour of the day, you know? That was a struggle for me this week. So
Yeah.
we get to share those things. And also, there's a community of other software developers, people who are learning this stuff. So they're like, hey, I didn't really understand how to do a JavaScript for loop or something like that. So um
You're reading Randall's.
The
yeah,
other
I
Randall
see you
says it's
guys laughing.
important
I'm
to have
like,
a
what
relationship
comment?
with yourself and Python. Can't forget about Python. He's going to be stealing Python from
Oh
Bryce.
god.
Watch out, Bryce.
Yeah,
Oh
and
god,
that's
funny.
the other
But
thing too
humor
is
helps
like,
too. Yeah.
yeah, humor helps, right? Like we have a community. It's not a super serious community. Like we love to joke around. We like to have a good time and like get into other people's lives and steal their love relationships with Python. I mean, that's just the thing we do.
Mhm.
So if that is something that you're looking for, if you're, trying to level up, take that next step as a software developer from somebody who's just out there orbiting and wants to take this on and
Take it
transition
seriously.
yeah,
Yeah.
take it seriously, you know,
And now,
become that
if
software
you wanted to
developer.
have a fight, it would be a zombie Python, and then have Bryce and Randall going at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Randall's in the Call of Duty zombies mode right now. And that's another
Mhm.
thing too, right? Like sometimes you got to play some video games to relieve some of this mental stress, and we're all there for you, right? Like, but you got to come back to the coding as well. So,
Mhm.
yeah, so if you're looking for a community, it's a really great community. A lot of the people that you see commenting here inside the Facebook group are part of that community, and that's why they show up here, because they love just getting the content. They love hanging out and spending time. So if that's something you're interested in, you can drop the word mental health in the comments. We'll also drop a link down there for you, but you can also just head over to codenoobs.io and scroll to the bottom of the page. There's a link there. But we also do action calls. So if you want to just talk to one of us about like what this program is, if it's right for you, just reach out to us. Myself, Danny, or Randall will be happy to answer any questions for you or set up a call where we give you some free mentoring, help sort of guide you on your journey to become a software developer and see if you're a good fit for the program. With that, also, last thing here, if you are watching this on YouTube, come hang out with us on Facebook. We have a group here. It's completely
Hell
free, the
yeah.
Facebook group. You can post whatever you want in there. You can like share with the group, what you're working on or any successes or challenges that you're having, or just get advice from the group as well. We also put a lot of value posts in there throughout the week. And of course, we do these calls every Saturday live inside the Facebook group. Go ahead, Randall.
Last announcement.
Mhm.
Scroll down through the feed. You will find a very bright post that says, "We want your feedback. You can win free
Mm.
lifetime access to the Web Dev Kickstarter course, where you get to learn HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and build a super sweet Pokemon Pokedex Chrome extension. And all you have to do to enter to win is just fill out a short survey, because what we're going to be doing is having an absolutely awesome, intensive experience in Paradise Mastermind, where you
Mhm.
learn Next.js. At the end of it, you'll be able to make websites and get hired by any company out there. So we just want to know your feedback for that. Just scroll down. It says we want your feedback. Has a beautiful picture of us in
Yeah.
Paradise. And
Yeah.
yeah, help us out there, and then you could be entered to win the Web Dev
Yeah.
Kickstarter course for free for life.
Yeah. Absolutely. And we really want your feedback. It's super helpful so that we know how to make that experience as valuable as possible for you guys. So,
Mhm.
with that, do you guys have anything else you'd like to share today? No. All right. Well, thanks again for hanging out. Sorry I was a few minutes late this morning. Puppy troubles, but we'll see you bright and early next Saturday. If you are inside the Web Dev Incubator, we'll see you in about 15 minutes. We'll be sending the link in there. None, I will message you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks,
Later,
guys. Have a
fellas.
good Saturday.